Hey, Montel Williams here. Look, I've got some incredible news to share with you. I want to tell you about my brand new book that's coming out that's called The Sailing of the Intrepid. Now, this book is more than just an historical account. It's a tribute to the brave men who served aboard the USS Intrepid and a celebration of their extraordinary legacy. Writing this book was such an incredible story, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share it with you. So don't wait to grab your little piece of history. The book is available right now to order. You can go to montelmedia.com, and you can even get a limited autograph signed copy. Now, thank you so much for your support. I can't wait for you to read this incredible story of the sailing of the Intrepid. I'll see you on the pages. Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, where we have a real conversation, unfiltered conversations about cannabis, its therapeutic potential, and the people driving this industry forward. I'm your host, Montel Williams, and today we've got an incredible episode lined up for you. Joining me are two trailblazers in the world of medical cannabis, education, and advocacy. First, we have Sabrina Fayaz, the director of the Master of Science in Medical Cannabinoid Therapeutics program at LECOM, the Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine. Sabrina has a wealth of experience in the cannabis industry, from working with multi-state operators to her own personal journey with cannabis as a breast cancer survivor. Also joining us today is Dr. Nick Bottaro, an adjunct professor at the same university program. Dr. Bottaro is a doctor of osteopathic medicine, a passionate patient advocate, and a researcher with a focus on cannabinoid-based treatments. Sabrina, Dr. Bottaro, thank you so much and welcome to being a part, and thank you for being a part of Let's Be Blunt with Montel today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Look, I'm so thrilled to have you both here. Let's dive right in. Sabrina, why don't we get started and start with you? I want to start with you because you have such a unique journey, working in the cannabis industry and leading an academic program and even using cannabis as part of your own cancer treatment. Can you share a bit of how all these experiences have shaped your perspective on cannabis as medicine?
Absolutely. I started in the industry in 2018 because my background is in complementary and alternative health. And when I found out about the therapeutic potential of cannabis, working in the recreational market, I was extremely passionate because I was helping people. And at the same time, I experienced, have my own story with cannabis, as many do who are in the industry. I was diagnosed as ER positive in 2022. And because of my previous knowledge with herbology and cannabis through my own personal research, I got on a strict RSO plan, which is Rick Simpson oil. It's the most concentrated form of cannabis that you can have. And I was on it, long story short, for 3 months before I was able to relocate from Las Vegas to Florida to have the double mastectomy. And I didn't have to take any uh, radiation or chemo, because in that 3 months of me coming from the West Coast to the East Coast, the 4 nodules that I had in my left breast significantly reduced, to the point where it changed the outcome of my surgery and the treatment. And it basically saved my quality of life. And my story is not unique. There are so many other people in the industry and outside of the industry that have found the therapeutic benefits of cannabis-based therapies. One of the driving forces of me really getting into the industry, in addition to my own experience, is I helped a woman that was on 14 different medications come off of a lot. She shared it with me through her knowledge of medical cannabis. And when I found out about the program at LECOM, they're the only osteopathic college, or the largest osteopathic college in the US. It just made sense to settle down and really expand and explore what Dr. Bottaro, he's a co-founder of the program. He's the reason why, one of the reasons why we're sitting here discussing the program, Medical Cannabinoid Therapeutics, Master of Science at LECOM, because he was an advocate um, for the program. So that's the whole reason why I'm here, and my passion for cannabis is has been life changing, not just for me, but for other people since 2018 that I've come across who's had a huge impact in their life.
Well, Dr. Bottaro, you've also dedicated much of your life and your career to educating patients and conducting research on medical cannabis. When you hear stories like, Sabrina's, I mean, these are no longer ends of one. These are stories that I hear over and over and over again. Yet when you talk to a congressman or a senator, you get, well, when there's more research done, then we'll accept this. It's like, I mean, how much more research do we have to get done? How many more examples? How many more ends of one, like Sabrina, do we have to get out there and stories be heard for people to understand that there is viable, real, efficacious benefit from cannabis, and cannabis is a medication? So, two questions. So, the one is, I mean, how much more research do we have to do before more people like yourself understand the benefits of cannabis? That's question one.
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly, the response that we need more research, unfortunately, is just it's a cop out. And I really learned that for the first time. I started this journey in 2016 when I didn't know much about cannabis, but it became legalized in the state of Florida in 2016. And so I knew there was something to it. I had a personal history with family member with cancer in it. And so I said, you know what, if I ever have an opportunity to get more involved in this, I'm going to. And that opportunity came in 2016, where I was a part founder of a company called DocMJ, which then grew throughout all of Florida and now 5 other states of physicians that were really leading this effort to understand and help patients with cannabis. And it was at that time where I didn't know much about it, but I was having the patients in front of me and I was seeing exactly what you're talking about. I was seeing the benefits. I was saying, okay, this person with Parkinson's disease, I saw them 6 months ago and they were in a wheelchair. They just walked into my office. What just happened? This 6-year-old with autism that was nonverbal and aggressive just came into my office and sat still for 30 minutes as I talked to the mom. What's going on here? And so that question of what's going on here, because the evidence is so clear, led me to then the way my brain works and the way LECOM actually taught me with what's called problem-based learning is you dive into the work, you open the books. And so here I am in 2016, seeing something effective, seeing something work in a way that I was never taught in med school. I had no understanding of it. So it forced me to dive into the literature. Well, in the literature, you do a search on PubMed, which is one of the leading kind of organizations of all the research in the United States and the world. And there's over 40,000 published articles and papers on cannabinoids or cannabis medicine. 40,000.
Which is more, we should say, by the way, than there is even on aspirin.
Any other research, there's no other that comes close to how much research is there. Now, people want to argue quality of research and double-blinded studies and things like that, but the truth is that we have not only anecdotal evidence, we have clinical evidence, and we do actually have every type of evidence. We have benchwork models, we have actual in vitro and in vivo studies of how this stuff works. So we know how it works, and that's really what led us into, in about 2017, I was approached by the administrators at Lake Erie College of Medicine and said, hey, they had listened to a lecture I did to about 200 physicians here in Tampa, and they're like, why are we not teaching this? And so in 2017, we started this journey of like, wait a second, we do know enough to truly teach this, and we got the Florida Department of Education to back us up. And now, next thing you know, we're graduating our 4th class of a 2-year master's program in cannabinoid therapeutics. So it's there. How much is it going to take to get legislators and politicians to get behind it? I don't think it's the research, to be honest. We don't have to get into politics, but I don't think it's the research. I think it's the
Well,
money.
wait, when you say you don't want to get into politics, it's politics that we have to get into to make this change. I spoke last year before, I think you're the Osteopathic Society's annual conference. I did it last year, and the number of doctors who were there who understood my connection with cannabis, came up to me afterwards, who spoke to me, on the side. I was thrilled, but at the same time, I was kind of disappointed that I had to have these conversations on the side. And we're still having these side conversations. They're starting to teach cannabis at places like George Washington University, at Harvard, and other places around the country. And it's not like the information is not available; it's out there. You talked about and mentioned the fact that there were well over 40,000 peer-reviewed published articles that are out there. There are, and it's part of the reason why we can't get beyond this from a medical standpoint. I think is because there's too much politics involved.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was one of our driving forces for starting this program, was really because we have physicians that are graduating every single year. When I first started this program, we started looking at this, there was only 8% of any United States medical graduates that had any training whatsoever on cannabis, and it was typically as a drug. Now, we're talking about an endocannabinoid system that is more complex than your nervous system, than your immune system, than your cardiovascular system. It's the most complex system in your body, and it's what cannabis directly interacts with, and yet it was never taught to us. And so there's such a huge, and still is this huge need for education, but good education. There's 40,000 articles, but not all of them are solid, good work. So understanding how to read through those and how to take the good information and then educate on that and then put that into practice. How do we use this in the hospitals? How do we use this as clinicians? When certain numbers come out that over 40% of people have used it or are using it currently, but your primary care doctor has no clue how it's affecting the other meds you're taking or really anything part of your life, there's a huge discrepancy of knowledge, and that's what the gap we're trying to fill is.
And let's talk a little bit more about this Masters of Science in Medical Cannabinoid Therapeutics program that's there. I mean, it's a 2-year program, 4-year program? What is it?
The 2-year program, 45 credit hours. And it's because it aligns with LECOM's process of ensuring that education is affordable. It's the least expensive medical Master of Science cannabinoid program out there. I'm a graduate of School of Pharmacy at the University of Maryland, their Master of Science program. However, although their program was fantastic, I feel like I align more closely with LECOM's program because it is whole body health, mind, and body and spirit. And
it's crazy that you went to a University of Maryland program where I remember back in the mid '70s, the University of Maryland literally was one of the places that then the fledgling DEA was using to research cannabis, but they were trying their best to write as many deleterious kind of articles as they could possibly write on it. And I can remember they used to actually incinerate cannabis on not the College Park, not the College Park campus, but right outside of College Park campus. They used to get rid of some of the stuff that they were researching on. I mean, this is not something that's new. I mean, we've known about the endocannabinoid system, and Dr. Bottaro, I appreciate the fact you brought that up. We've known about the endocannabinoid system since really mid '80s, and research has been, let's think that the FDA and our federal government utilized that research to give themselves their own patent on cannabinoids back in 2002. So now we're at 2025, and we're still arguing whether or not this should be something that should be allowed to happen. I'm just blown away that, it's been, and though you shouldn't say it, but I will say it. Part of this has only been stigmatized and been this way and stayed this way because there are those members of our society who would really like to utilize this as a re-enslavement tool in some ways. If you take a look at the number of brown and black people who have been incarcerated for cannabis in America, you understand why it's still as crazy policies that have been against it. Even now, where we have so many states in this country that have legal cannabis programs, there are still people being arrested in those states for using cannabis.
Yeah. I mean, even our own terminology, like I've made it a point. And one of the classes we teach at our program is actually the history. I think it's so important. It's not just about how it works, the pharmacokinetics, the biology, how it works in medicine, but it's also the history, the business of it. What a incredible business of it, the legislation that surrounds it. There's so much complexities to it. But one of the things in the history, but to your point, was that even the term marijuana.
Correct.
I refuse to use the term marijuana. It is actually a slur because it was used originally in the 60s because that's what they called it in Mexico. And during the Nixon era, that term was used as a negative, thinking if we hear this term that sounds like a Spanish term, it will turn people away from it.
And part of that was also because Mary Jane was actually associated with Central American prostitutes. So, I mean, but if we really want to talk history, this country was built on cannabis. Most of us people in this country, when you study history, we read, oh, it was cotton and tobacco. No, it wasn't. We go back to the late 1600s, early 1700s. In the early 1700s, you could pay your taxes in America with hemp. And back then, there wasn't anything to distinguish hemp from cannabis because they were the same plant.
In some of the original articles and the founding fathers of the original when they came over and established in New England, it was actually a mandate that they had to grow hemp.
Correct. As a matter of fact, and what is it? Our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution were written on hemp.
On hemp.
All of our forefathers grew it, sold it, utilized it. The only thing that America had in common with the British when we fought them was that we were all wearing hemp-based uniforms. Same thing with it comes in the North and the South during the Revolutionary War. Hemp-based uniforms. The whole word canvas comes from cannabis. I mean, if we really told the history of cannabis in America, let's also not hesitate to recognize the fact that when you're talking about late 1600s, early 1700s, those were robust times. There was no air conditioning. There was no heat. There was, we didn't sleep on beds. We didn't sleep on mattresses. People were sleeping on the ground. There were lions and tigers and bears out there. Oh my. So there was a tough time, and most people don't even recognize the fact that in America, back in the late 1600s, early 1700s, most people drank a near beer. Why? We had alcohol that we used and we processed our water because, upstream from us, there were lions and tigers and bears that were doing what in the water. And so downstream, instead of drinking it straight out of the stream, you had to boil it, turn it into something, put a little alcohol in it so that it would last throughout the day. Babies were drinking something that was about a 3.1, 2.9 alcohol content. So we now jump forward 200 years, 250 years, and now we're vilifying something that we don't even as Americans understand why cannabis was vilified to begin with. It was vilified because of two individuals, William Randolph Hearst and Charles DuPont, who paid Henry Anslinger to, after he got fired as the biggest prohibitionist that there was out there, but as soon as prohibition was overturned, he needed to have a job. And those two funded a lot of the campaigns to vilify cannabis the way it was back in 1937 for the Marijuana Tax Act. So again, though, here we are sitting here today, and I could probably pull out 100 books across the country and thousands of stories of that are more and more stories like Sabrina's, where people had chosen to use some sort of cannabis as therapy for whatever their malady was, and it had such a profound impact that it should be utilized. Yes, we need to do more studies. We need to study a little bit more and make sure that we're processing right and those kinds of things. However, you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You know what I mean? Right?
Absolutely. I mean, and all the points that you're making are exactly what, just even the history. Our very first course in the master's program is the history of cannabis. And we talk about these exact things because we have to understand the one thing that we're realizing more and more is you'll get people that are now interested, they're opening up their minds. Okay, there's a master's program in it. I want to learn about it. But you can't easily take away the stigma that's been put into their brains by society from their childhood. And so the very first thing we try to do is say, hey, let's look at the history. Let's objectively look at the history and see where we were and how we got to where we are. Because the only way that we can truly fix this is if we make changes based on where we've come from. And even into current day, I mean, if you're up on the latest politics that just has happened in the last couple of weeks, you have the new director of the DEA that originally said that they were going to make this a top priority to reschedule this from a 1 to a 3. And now he just gave his top 10 things that he's going to work on. And it wasn't in the top 10 list. We're not even talking about rescheduling anymore. The judge that was overseeing the entire rescheduling process last week said, hey, August 1st, I'm retiring. So the entire efforts that even have happened recently in the political arena to get this at least rescheduled so we can do those studies that you're talking about, now in a political arena is all upside down because the people that actually were for it all of a sudden are in a back seat and leaving the situation. You're like, what's going on? We were so close.
And Sabrina, I mean, what do you think needs to happen to literally get people to understand that there's so much misinformation out there, there's so much stigma out there? We do recognize, as the doctors have said, I mean, as recently as in the 1940s, we did have a program in the United States called Hemp for Victory, where we required farmers across the country, even after they had vilified and tried to make hemp and cannabis, this forbidden substance that couldn't be traded around the world, we required it to be grown by farmers. Why? Because we needed it for our sails and our ropes for our ships during World War II. And it's experiences like yours, Sabrina, that you mentioned earlier, your personal experience, that has inspired you to work and focus on education. But what do you think we need to do to change this attitude and make cannabis more acceptable and more accepted as a therapeutic option?
I believe providing education and structure, treating cannabis based therapy as any other form of treatment. I believe once we break the stigma through conversation, through science and education, doctors will feel more comfortable discussing the pharmacology of cannabis. And the main issue is education. Currently, with this cohort, we have 2 doctors. One's retired, one is actively working, and then we have 2 new and upcoming dual enrollee students. And in one of our previous Zoom session or virtual sessions, I was curious. I know that I have a lot of medical professionals in my family, and they don't talk about the endocannabinoid system. They were unaware of the ECS and didn't feel comfortable discussing anything related to that with any of their patients. And now we have, at least with our 2 new upcoming doctors, they are at least discussing. They've advised that they're not going into full detail when it comes to the pharmacology of cannabis, but they do mention in the course program that there is an endocannabinoid system, and they briefly cover that. I believe education and more research. LECOM has been, we're based out of Pennsylvania, but they've been partnered with Air Wellness since 2018, and they're a part of the Academic Clinical Research Center, where we create studies. We have a current study going on with the impact of medical marijuana on pain management and opioid use. So we're doing what we can at a state level, working with Air Wellness to bring more education. But until we can deprogram with science and education, uh, it's really difficult to go anywhere when a person is closed. I feel like once you're in a situation where you don't have any other option or anything to lose, because one of the great things about cannabis-based therapies is the lack of side effects. They're very minor compared to other farm drugs. So the therapeutic potential is high, very high, and it's through education, science, and a conversation just like this, letting people know that there is a program out there. Pew Research Center just released an article earlier this month regarding 9 facts about cannabis, marijuana, in Americans. And they did a poll, and out of 10 Americans, only 1 was against any kind of medical or recreational cannabis program, which speaks volumes. I feel like although we have a long way to go, we are making progress, because at least now they're discussing the endocannabinoid system in doctor programs, whereas previously that wasn't happening. And just educating through science. Educating is key, because until it's rescheduled, like Dr. Bottaro was saying, there's not much that we can do other than what we're doing. Continue to advocate, to continue to research, and push the agenda.
Well, I mean, what's crazy though is that we have right now, what is it, close to, I think it's 39 states or 40 states and the District of Columbia that have some sort of cannabis legislation that allows for cannabis use in their states. That's close to, what is it, 70, 80% of the nation that says it's okay. Yet we still can't get the Fed to kick it over the top. And when you talk about the endocannabinoid system, we talk about there are so many things that are now coming out where, when you look at research around the world, there are certain people who are finding out that now possibly, a deficiency in that endocannabinoid system could be the cause of several maladies that we face worldwide. For anandamide deficiency, we know anandamide being one of those two endocannabinoids or cannabinoids that we actually make in our bodies ourselves. We're starting to find out that deficiency in anandamide might be one of the things that might be, we don't know. There's been research out of New Zealand that says this, that, could be one of the things that could be could be causing some of the spectrum disorders that we have. So, I mean, it's not like this is something that's not known. Why do you think, doctor, that even today, I mean, it's like, I remember, very funny. I've been speaking around the country on different issues, and breakthroughs in medicine. I was told by one of the top minds in this world, any breakthrough in medicine is normally met with the most vehement and adamant resistance by the medical community. I can remember reaching way back, looking way back to the late 70s when a particular device was manufactured and started to be shipped around the world. And the number of doctors who wrote papers about the fact that this was probably one of the could end up being one of the worst things that could happen for medicine, because, if these people think that this particular device is going to give them the answers, they're wrong. And we know that this device is not going to give the answers that they think they are. And what were they talking about? They were talking about something called an MRI. Doctors literally got their panties in a wad because they were going to be spending $20 million to put this thing in a hospital, and they thought that they could have used the money for something else. And now we know, after we look back, how stupid some of those articles were written about people who were fighting against MRIs.
Yeah.
To me, it's the same thing when it comes to cannabis. I mean, it's been around for 3,500 years, close to 5,000 years. A funny story, when we were talking earlier about our forefathers, when they moved Benjamin Franklin's desk that was in the Smithsonian Institute that had been there for 25 years, and on his desk he had this little pipe holder thing. And somebody decided to take one of the pipes out of his pipe holder and scrape it and test it. And what did they find was in there? Same thing that old Ben was growing in his backyard. Excuse me. So I just don't understand, why is there such vehement, adamant resistance against something? Is it because it's cheap? Is it because you know that at the end of the day, what would they do? GW Pharmaceuticals makes a product that tries to charge $1,800 for it, where it's a weed. And we know it doesn't cost that much to make that. And it's also found on every continent in the world. Why do you think doctors are fighting it so much?
I think whether it's the MRI machines or anything new in medicine, I think there's really three categories of doctors, or any really medical professional that has an opinion about this stuff. You have the people like myself that we think outside the box, and really all comes down to doing the best for our patients, whatever we can do. And sometimes that means thinking outside of the script. And so, I graduated from med school about 10 years ago, a little over now. And this was not anything that we were taught, and it was something that was way outside the box. But I saw how it was helping patients, and so that was my primary. This is helping. I see it. I need to understand why and how, and by understanding why and how, I then can help people even more. I mean, the endocannabinoid system, and that's just scratching the surface. We haven't even talked about terpenes and the over 140 different cannabinoids and the flavonoids, and my good friend Henry Lowe, who has the very first flavonoid from a cannabis plant ever patented in the United States, now doing research at Johns Hopkins to treat pancreatic cancer. And he's from Jamaica. He's an amazing guy, Dr. Henry Lowe. But my point is, so there's one category of doctors or physicians or professionals that are like, we want to help people. And that sometimes means thinking outside the box to do so. Then you have the people that are okay with kind of just going over the line a little bit, saying, you know what, I didn't learn about it in school, but I am seeing some evidence, so I'm open to it, but I'm going to be real, real cautious about it. And then you have the people that are just, I didn't learn this in med school. This isn't approved by the academy, and this is wrong. And I was taught in my 5th grade DARE class that that my brain is going to get smashed like a raw egg. So you're like, you have these 3 sets, and unfortunately, sometimes the loudest or sometimes the most influential people in medicine are the ones that are in that 3rd category. They don't think outside the box until it's really forced into them. And this is very, very evident even in just my local practice here in Florida. I graduated, and very quickly after I graduated, I got my license here in Florida, and then the state was allowed here in Florida. Real quick story. So all of my mentors, all of these physicians that trained me over the years, they saw that, Dr. Bottaro, why are you getting into this? Why are you doing this? You're going to ruin your career. And so I said, I let them kind of have that opinion, and I kept thinking outside the box, and I helped tens of thousands of patients here in Florida. So those same physicians that closed their door in my face, my friends that didn't want anything to do with me when this first started in 2016, 2017 here in Florida, in 2019 were the ones calling me all the time saying, please come in and educate me and my staff on what is going on, because we see that it's working and we don't understand it. So please come. So as the experience is happening, as people are opening their eyes and they're seeing the benefits of it, you're starting to get more and more openness to it. And that's where we have to really come in with not kind of just fluffy evidence and things like that, but we really got to come in with some strong education. As Sabrina was saying, that's the key here, the science and the education. For when they do start to open up, that's when we can really start to educate them and show them how to use it appropriately, and the different types and kinds, and how to really help people with this.
Well, cannabis therapy is deeply personal, and education is key to breaking that stigma and bringing it down. And misinformation is still out there and still exists. But for Sabrina, you mentioned earlier that your personal experience with cannabis inspired you to focus on education. What do you think needs to change to make more cannabis education more accessible and more accepted as a therapeutic option?
The first is changing people's mind and even discussing it and wanting to discuss it and explore more of the therapeutic options. Our Master of Science in Medical Cannabinoid Therapeutics program, we provide the tools and the resources for people to feel comfortable discussing cannabis therapy. We have a dosing strategy course. We go over the pharmacology and classification. As Nick mentioned, the introduction to the history of cannabis is our first course in the program. And it's because we want to set a foundation. But really, the key is just having the open mind to talk about it initially, to discuss the physical and emotional benefits that it does provide to people. And I think education, because there are so many Americans that are open to the legalization of any kind of medical or adult use cannabis program in their state, it's more important than ever. Like you mentioned earlier, 40 states already have some kind of medical cannabis program, and having the knowledge and education, not just in medical space, but in the political arena or in uh, patient in dispensaries with patient information. The information and it's available. It's all out there. It's online. It's scattered everywhere. This Master of Science program narrows everything down to where you can find that information that you're looking for. It's taught by Dr. Bottaro. We have all of our adjunct professors either work in the industry or have worked or are currently working with patients in their practice with medical cannabis treatment options.
I mean, you've worked in both the industry side and the academic side. So, I mean, what do you think it's going to take to get? Yeah, I happen to be working with a product that I've created, and it's introduced in being sold in Georgia. And one of the
Mhm.
things about the legislation in Georgia was that they brought on one of the local universities, a couple of them, that are literally working alongside Botanical Sciences, which is the company that I work with in Georgia, to ensure that academia is involved in what they're doing as they move forward. I mean, what do you think are some of the biggest differences that you've seen and noticed in those two worlds? And why can't these two worlds come together a little bit more than they have?
So I don't want to get into the politics of it, but I do believe it is politics because you're mixing medicine, what some people consider as medicine, to what other people consider as recreational use. So getting the information out there. One way is, I believe, through dispensaries. A lot of people that visit, or even in medical states, I believe the recommending physician should take more than a 2-hour course on medical cannabis before they're able to recommend medical cannabis to the patient population. It's boils down to educating our medical professionals, our lawyers and politicians, because once we're able to really change minds through science and education and break that stigma, um, people will be more open to it. The information is out there, it's just suppressed.
You know,
Um,
earlier you said something about the fact that that people have a difference of opinions between medical and recreational, and I happen to have a difference of opinion in that also. I think that anybody that gravitates towards cannabis rather than alcohol or other things that are in our society, are all of them are gravitating towards cannabis because of a medical reason. If you say that you want to take cannabis because it helps you sleep better, that's medical. You say you've taken cannabis because it helps you relax better when you come home from work, then drink a drink. I think that's medical. If that makes you, if it helps you calm down, if it helps you, reduces some of your anxiety, any of those things to me is medical. Whether you go to a recreational facility to buy it or not, you're still going to get the same results out of it, when you take it home and you use it. So, Dr. Bottaro, I mean,
Absolutely.
you conducted thousands of cannabis assessments on patients, and are there any particular success stories that you've heard from, or patients that have experienced things that stand out to you that reaffirm your belief in cannabis as a therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's really why I grabbed so strongly onto this. I never knew I was going to get into this. I'm an ophthalmologist by trade. I do eye surgery. So how does cannabis fit into that? But it's really it's the center goal of I want to help people however I can. And when I saw those stories, a couple of them, pretty much I can tell just about anybody that's on any form or dose of opiates. I can get you off of any and all opiates within 6 months. I have not failed that. I have over 12,000 patients that I've seen and treated, and many of them are on opiates. We have the opiate epidemic, fentanyl issues, and so much going on. And I have people on morphine pumps, people addicted to Dilaudid and other types of really strong opiates. And I can guarantee with a certain way of using this cannabis products correctly, I can get you off of all your opiates. But the key is it's not just getting you off of it, but it's actually what was the opiate doing? Well, it was helping you with pain relief. So can you get you off of it, but also still have pain relief? And the absolute answer is yes. So it's not just, hey, I can help you get off of these medications. Another big one was peripheral neuropathy. People with diabetic pain or peripheral neuropathy pain, absolutely, I can help with that in a significant way by using certain amounts, actually high levels of CBD and CBG, which is another type of cannabinoid that can actually really reverse some of the effects of peripheral neuropathy.
So, Sabrina, what do you think it's going to take for us to, I mean, or how long do you think it's going to take before, my thoughts have always been I got to wait for half the Congress and Senate to die off. However, I don't want to wait that long. But what do you think it's going to take for us to finally, accept this as a viable alternative, extra new weapon that doctors can have in their quiver?
um, it's unfortunate, but rescheduling. I honestly feel once it is rescheduled, that alone will flip a switch in people's minds. Because if the federal government deems it okay to be rescheduled, then maybe there is something to it. And
See, I mean,
I believe
well, go ahead. Go ahead.
people will be more open minded to the therapeutic potential. But rescheduling, and unfortunately, what you said, we have to get a more up to date generation in our government that are not even generation, just individuals that are open to the therapeutic.
Look, if the same guys that are sneaking out the back of the parties in Washington D.C. right now that are in the that have titles of Congress and Senate that are smoking a joint every now and then would just speak to their coworkers and say, "I think we've missed the boat with this. I think that could change it." And then two, I think you just said it right. It's not a matter of rescheduling because if we reschedule, then I think we open up a Pandora's box that we didn't even think we wanted to get involved in. One, why? Because you reschedule it, that who's it fall under? Falls under the FDA. If it falls under the FDA, it falls under a whole bunch of people who have been programmed to say no. So therefore, they will battle and fight and fight and fight and fight and fight to try to keep this same thing going. And it's all because at the end of the day, we look at those same 40 states and the District of Columbia, there are people still being arrested right now for cannabis violations. Why? Because we have a for-profit prison system that needs to have and be loaded. And what's the easiest way to do this? You hardly ever hear about people walking around in Wall Street arresting somebody who's got a joint in their pocket, but you go to any downtown area in America and you'll see them get arrested and you won't see them get arrested. So as long as we still have a tool that we can discriminate against people and throw them in jail for things, I think it's going to stay this way until or unless we get more people running for office. Doc, what do you think? What's it going to take? What do we have to do? We need doctors like yourself to go on tour around America to say, come on, man, stop the stupid. What's it going to take to get some of your peers to step up to the plate and say, this is a viable alternative?
Yeah, I know there's no perfect answer here. I think rescheduling will take a lot of those doctors that are kind of on the line about it, and I know a lot of them where they say as soon as it's allowed, that's when we're going to take the step. So I do think there are some positives about rescheduling where it's going to get a lot of the professional and the medical community to then it's going to be okay to talk about it. It's going to be okay to look at it. Whereas right now, it's just that's the excuse. It's Schedule 1. It's not allowed. It's federally illegal. I'm not talking about it. So that's going to be one positive if it ever gets rescheduled. But I agree with you. Then it all comes under the control of people that want nothing to do with it or that want to monetize it and make it better. So, I think it's a mess. But any step forward is just what we need to keep doing and what we've been doing for decades. A lot of people before me and before you, just people that have fought this fight because we do understand that it's medicine and we do understand it's really helping people. And the people that do understand that, we just need to get our group to be larger. It needs to start including more of the people in politics. It needs to start including more of the professional societies. It needs to start including a lot more of the organizations. And so unfortunately for the organizations, for a lot of these people, it's only going to come once it profits them. And that's one of the things too that you see in industry. I worked as a clinician, I've worked as a patient, I've been a patient, and I've worked actually on the dispensary side and now also in the education side. So I've seen this from every angle. And at the end of the day, it's a medicine. It works. There's a whole lot of politics around it and a whole lot of people that want to make money off of it. And so how do you equalize all of that? You're not going to be able to do it in a simple way. It's by slowly chipping away, by getting more people into our group to understand it. And it's going to come with experience. It's going to come with those stories. Hey, this politician did use cannabis to treat their cancer and they did a lot better. Wow, now we're getting a little traction here. So it's going to take more and more of that. But whether it goes ideally the way we want it to is the problem. I think it's going to get what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to get rescheduled. I think you're going to get the pharmaceutical companies starting to capitalize on this. Pfizer Pharmaceutical came out with a study. I'm an ophthalmologist. I love eyes. Pfizer in 1987 did research on the cornea. If you've ever scratched your cornea, it's one of the most painful things that you can do. It's so painful when you scratch your eye. They came out with a study that showed that the cannabinoid receptors on the surface of your eye increased tenfold after an injury to your cornea because it recruits healing factors to help your cornea heal more quickly and without scarring. Pfizer did this study in 1987. Why is there no eye drops in the United States that have cannabinoids to help with your corneal abrasions? Why in Jamaica can I go to the store and there's 8 different eight different eye drops with different varieties of cannabinoids in it to help with glaucoma, to help with eye irritation, with dry eye, things like that. So you're going to start to see this shift, I think, with rescheduling, if it ever happens, where you're going to start seeing pharmaceuticals come out. And then you're going to get more people starting to, how many people now are open to CBD because of Epidiolex by GW Pharmaceuticals? So that right there is your exact example of how I think it's going to go. You have a company that takes what we already know, CBD, it grows in a weed, in hemp. They extract it. You can get it for $20 for a 30 milliliter vial, but they want to charge $2,000 to put it in an IV. But they're just showing us the same thing that we already know, but they're profiting to it. But now you got the whole neurology community using it off label for 100 different diagnoses because Epidiolex works. So you're going to start to see that type of thing happen. But because of corruption and everybody's kind of profit needs and all this stuff, it's going to continue to take a very kind of skewed way to get there. But we will get there.
Absolutely. Well, I got to thank you guys both for being here. Look, if people want to get more information about the program that you're involved in, where would they go?
They could go to
Sabrina.
LECOM and then like in Google, LECOM MS MCT, and it brings up our program, our webpage. It's Master of Science in Medical Cannabinoid Therapeutics. And we have the curriculum. We have a 1-minute video of an overview. And I can always be emailed at mct@lecom.edu to provide direct information.
And Doc, you've been involved with some groundbreaking research in cannabinoid-based treatments. Can you share some of those insights, or at least share a link to where people can go to read a little bit about the studies that you've been involved in?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, because of the regulatory environment, a lot of the studies aren't published. But because we have such a large subset of patients that freely and consent to, giving feedback, giving us that data, and doing these studies with us, we have not just myself, but there's dozens of doctors that are doing this kind of like not underground, but just these studies with patient consent that are already doing it in the state systems where it's allowed. So, some of the studies that we showed, I did one study, it was a survey of over 5,000 patients that was just a simple question of how many pharmaceutical medications have you come off of since starting medical cannabis? And over 80% of the respondents decreased 1 to 2. Over 30% of patients that were using medical cannabis came off of 3 to 5 drugs. And I had about 10% of patients that came off of 5 or more pharmaceutical drugs. To answer a whole nother question of why we're having so much difficulty getting this passed, I just gave you the answer. These patients are coming off of their pharmaceuticals just by using the right type of cannabinoid. So we've seen things like inhalation of CBD helping to reverse some of the symptoms of emphysema and COPD. We've seen things like also with CBD use, reversing some of the damage caused by peripheral neuropathy. Sleep is a big one. If you ask anybody, the 2 biggest things for cannabis, it's going to be pain, sleep, and then nausea's in there too. But there haven't been any good studies on sleep. Myself and a pulmonologist took it upon ourselves to actually do sleep studies on patients to look at the different brain waves during sleep. And actually cannabis, a lot of people will tell you that it reduces REM sleep, which is a really important stage of sleep for healing. But what we found was, although it does reduce REM sleep, but just about 10%, so it shortens the time of REM sleep, what it does is it increases delta sleep, which is a much deeper sleep and much healthier healing sleep. But it allows you to get one extra sleep cycle typically. So on average, everybody's going to say, oh, you're losing REM sleep. It's bad for your sleep. But the truth is you're getting an additional, on average, 2 hours of sleep, which is giving you a whole nother REM and delta sleep. So we have studies that show this, that cannabis use is giving a deeper, healthier sleep, more rejuvenating sleep. We have studies that show that it's increasing lung function, pulmonary function with the proper inhaled products. And that's a little, some people will say, well, you can't be inhaling smoke and things like that. But there's different routes, right? We have one of the companies I used to work for, we developed an inhaler a nebulizer. So one of the things I love is actually formulations. You have a cannabis plant with all these hundreds of chemicals in it, but I can personalize this medicine for you. You have depression, you have back pain, and you have neuropathy. Well, there's actually very specific cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids in the right combination that will help those three things for you. So it's the most personalized medicine. We have research that shows that. And, as soon as we can, this will all get released out to the public where it's like, hey, and peer reviewed and double blinded studied. So those are some of the things. Autism, we talked about that too. I mean, I never imagined getting myself into pediatrics and helping with autism. But I'll tell you right now, I absolutely have fallen in love with it, because when you see a nonverbal, aggressive little child that never really had a bond with their parent because of their autism or their spectrum disorder, now you see them compassionate. Now you see them responding. Now you see them talking. There's really nothing that changes that. Yeah, that's amazing. So
I can't thank you both enough for being here. Sabrina, what's next for you?
We have a cohort that's up and focusing on ensuring we're making leaders, knowledgeable professionals out there in the Medical Cannabinoid Therapeutics program. For anyone interested, they can.
And Doc, sure, no, go ahead.
I was going to say they can find us
I'm sorry,
at lecom.edu, the MSCT program.
Cool. And Doc, if there was one shining star that's out there that you're looking towards and you're saying, this is what's going to help us do the breakthrough, what do you think is the most exciting aspect of some of the new cannabinoid research that's out there?
My interests are everywhere with cannabinoids. That's what I love to do. I love the formulations of it. I had mentioned before Dr. Henry Lowe, who is a professor at the University of West Indies, who now has a patent on the first ever flavonoid from cannabis, working with Johns Hopkins University. And it's shown that in addition to standard chemo treatments, is 30% more effective at reducing or treating pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer is very personal to me, because actually that's how I got into cannabis, because my mom passed in 2016 from pancreatic cancer in a cannabis state, and her doctors laughed me out of the room when I asked if she could use that instead of the 8 milligrams of Dilaudid for her pain.
It's insane, because before the study you were talking about, there was a study that was done in New Zealand that came out with the same kind of information, that they were saying that certain cannabinoids, when together, seem to have an impact on pancreatic cancer, right?
Yeah. So, for me, it's not that it's the snake oil that treats everything, but it's such a complex plant, and there's so much medicine in the plant that can be tailored for personalized medicine, that, my efforts are really, I'm kind of letting the legislation, whatever is going to happen here is going to happen. But I want to be ready where I actually can have tailored medicine for patients for specific things.
If we have a system in our body that is antagonized by this plant specifically, if we make our own endocannabinoids, there's got to be some truth to this. You can't. I mean, that's the one that blows me out the door the most. We have anandamide and 2-AG. We know that we have receptors in our brain and our peripheral organs that actually receive and are antagonized by cannabis. This should be something that should have been researched for the last 100 years, and we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation, because it would already be accepted.
Our bodies require oxygen. We know that. This is like people saying that we don't need oxygen. Our bodies require endocannabinoids to function and to live. People's arguments against this is arguing that a natural physiological thing that's natural in all of us, we all have endocannabinoids working right now in this moment. To say that cannabinoids are not therapeutic at some level, it's just naive.
Blows the mind. Both of you, thank you so much for being a part of Let's Be Blunt today. I would love to have you back. For those who won't get to see this, we've been through some technical hell and back, and I really appreciate the fact that the two of you have stuck along with me this whole time. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. Wish you well. Much love to your families, and let's do it again sometime, okay?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. And make sure you keep tuning in to Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments. Military Makeover is so grateful for the support of Purple Heart Homes, a nonprofit organization that rebuilds and transforms the homes for our veterans.
Our heroes come home with sacrifices most of us can't imagine. As a veteran myself, I've been there and founded Purple Heart Homes to help.
When I tell the story of Purple Heart Homes, it's the freedom to not have to depend on somebody else to do the simple everyday things in life.
Visit phhusa.org/makeover to learn how you can help.